Let's take a look at the graph of y equals sine of x. Y equals sine of x. So we have a graph that looks like this. We have outputs, which are ratios that go from -1 to +1. And we want to include part of this graph, just part of it. We're going to want to cut a chunk out of it that includes all of the outputs so that we can limit that domain and create a partial function that's going to pass the horizontal line test, because clearly right now it will fail. See, look, it fails the horizontal line test. So we're going to choose, remember this is -π/2, this is +π/2. We're going to choose this section right here because that gives us all of our outputs from -1 to +1, but creates a part of a function that's going to pass the horizontal line test. So we're going to limit the domain from -π/2 to +π/2. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to show you -π/2 is down on the negative y-axis. +π/2 is on the positive y-axis. There's our partial unit circle that's going to give us our values. Remember, this ordered pair is 0, -1, and this one is 0, +1. So it gives us all of the ratios from -1 to +1. And we're talking about quadrants 1 and 4. However, the angle has to be between -π/2 and +π/2. The range, you can see from the graph, is going to go from -1 to +1. Now, if we have y equals the inverse sine of x, y equals the inverse sine of x, that's going to give us a domain of -1 to 1 and a range of -π/2 to π/2. So -1 to 1 is ratios, -π/2 to π/2, those are angles. So when we have y equals the inverse sine of x, we input ratios and we get out angles. Same is true if we were to write this with the word or the term arcsine. Arcsine is just another way of saying inverse sine. So this is just another way of saying inverse sine. But what that inverse does is it puts in ratios and you get out angles. So using this notation or this notation means the same thing. Means the same exact thing. So here's some flashcards. Now these partial unit circles right here, this partial unit circle, that's going to be important and helpful for you to truly understand what it is that you're learning. So a flashcard that I would make is y equals inverse sine of x. The domain puts in ratios, so the domain is -1 to 1, and the range are angles between -π/2 to π/2. And with this one, we're going to want to draw that partial unit circle, -π/2 to π/2. And hopefully that will give you your visual. And I'll use those partial unit circles when I do examples. Okay, let's quickly do the tangent function as well. So y equals tangent of x. We're going to call that negative pi over 2. Make that a little darker. Negative pi over 2. And then this will be positive pi over 2. These are asymptotes. And then our tangent function looks like this. And it repeats, but if we take this one cycle from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, we get a function that passes the horizontal line test and covers all of the range from negative infinity to positive infinity. So the domain for this function, for our tangent function, the domain is negative pi over 2 with parentheses to pi over 2, because negative pi over 2 and pi over 2 are not included. Those are asymptotes. That's where your tangent function is undefined. And then the range goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. So when we create the inverse function, the domain of the inverse function is negative infinity to positive infinity. Those are the ratios that we can put into the inverse function. And we get out angles that fall between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So this time I make open circles for my partial unit circle to show that negative pi over 2 and pi over 2 are not included. But again, we're going to be getting angles in quadrants 1 and 4. And I say 1 and 4 the short way because 4, you can't go all the way around to get to it. You have to make a negative move to get into quadrant 4. That's true for sine and tangent. You have to make a negative move to get into that fourth quadrant for sine, for arcsine and arctangent. So here we have some flashcards. Y equals the inverse tangent of x is what I would put on the front with the word domain. And that's negative infinity to positive infinity. And then the range for y equals the inverse tangent of x is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2 with parentheses. And the partial unit circle is an open circle with that little half circle showing quadrants 1 and 4. Quadrants 1 and 4. Now we can write this as y equals inverse tangent of x, or we can use the arc notation, y equals arctangent of x. Sometimes I put the parentheses and sometimes I don't.